Hello and welcome to Adventures into Odyssey with Wyatt Jackson. I'm your host, Wyatt Jackson, and I'm super excited because I'm starting up this new podcast here. And I know there's tons of Adventures in Odyssey podcasts already out there. And yeah, I know that I'm making another one, but hey, it's fun. So before I get into the album review, I'm just going to talk about the podcast for a sec, because I think you should know. So, Adventures into Odyssey. It's going to be a fan-based podcast that has no affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or focus on the family. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a whole bunch of episode reviews about New Odyssey, Old Odyssey, and Odyssey in general. Okay? So what I mean about New Odyssey, I usually mean the era album 50 up. Old Odyssey, I usually refer to as Hal Smith, and Odyssey is the Paul Herlinger. In case you don't know, it's the three voices of Wits, and they kind of go concurrent with the Odyssey timeline. So, without further ado, here's my first episode 248, Terror from the Skies, in Album 19, A Time of Discovery. So, this was both written and directed by Paul McCusker, which is very good. Good job, Paul McCusker. Executive producer was Chuck Bolte. Again, very good, Chuck Bolte. And, what was the sound design? I'm trying to find it on the AIO wiki. I can't find it. Okay, well, anyway, sound design. I'll get into that later. So, without further ado, let's get into the plot of Terror from the Skies. It's the first scene. It's in the Hodges house. So Lawrence's mum is going to the Silver Wind restaurant. A very nice name for a restaurant. And she got Jimmy Barkley to babysit Lawrence, which, what was she thinking? Babysitting Lawrence? That's bad enough, but getting Jimmy Barkley to do it? Okay, whatever. So Jimmy's babysitting Lawrence, and, Lawrence's mom calls it babysitting, and then Lawrence says, it's not babysitting, he's just watching me, and then she makes him kiss her, and he's embarrassed, and so anyway, she leaves, and right from the get-go, Jimmy, I notice, is kind of a jerk, and Lawrence is super annoying, like ultra annoying, and Jimmy's a jerk. He has an English paper to write, and so he's like, okay, I'm busy, and Lawrence wants to do something with him. He's like, no, I got this English paper, and then Lawrence calls Jimmy a terrorist. Oh man, Lawrence, don't call someone a terrorist. I don't know. I don't like Lawrence in this episode very much. So Lawrence calls Jimmy a terrorist, and Jimmy's like, yeah, go watch TV. And so Lawrence goes and watches TV. And so I noticed the ad. It says, puts a shine on your floor, your countertops, even your teeth. I'm like, what is this? Oh, that's disgusting. And then he switches the channels a bit, and he gets to a show called Throbbing Jugulars. Throbbing Jugulars. And I'm not even going to discuss what Focus on the Family was thinking there. So anyway, second scene, we go to the radio studio. So Edwin Blackguard and Walter Shakespeare are about to do their big broadcast, and they're both pretty excited about it, because they're doing this big radio broadcast, and they've rehearsed a while, and everyone's in place, and they're almost ready. And then Mr. Mifflin. What kind of a name is that? I don't know. Weird. So anyway, Mr. Mifflin wants to talk with Edwin, and Mr. Mifflin's the owner of the radio station. Or, I'm not sure. I can't remember what he is. And he loves the idea of doing a live drama, and he compliments Edwin, and Edwin blushes, and you can, it's awesome. But he has to put in the sponsor's commercial, or the show is cancelled. And so we'll get into that later, because it's really hilarious, and, yeah. So anyway, Edwin is like, it's gonna ruin the show if we have the sponsor's commercial, and Mr. Mifflin's like, buddy, you gotta put the commercial in, or the show's cancelled, so Edwin is like, whatever, okay. So, next scene, we cut over to the Hodges house. So Jimmy's still writing the essay, and Lawrence is bugging Jimmy, and Lawrence is just being a jerk and kind of annoying in general, and Jimmy's being a jerk. And then Lawrence, Jimmy's like, I thought you were watching TV, and Lawrence is like, yeah, but I was, I got bored, and then he tells Jimmy he watched Throbbing Jugulars and Attack of the Asylum Killers with Long Teeth. And then Jimmy's like, Lawrence! Don't do that! And he's like, he's going to get in trouble because he wasn't supposed to let Lawrence watch it. And then Lawrence says the movies don't affect him, and then he's really annoying, and he's just annoying, and I don't like Lawrence in this episode for obvious reasons. And then so Jimmy's like, well, watch the radio. I still have tons of English writing to do, and Lawrence is like, in the other room? And Jimmy's like, yeah, I thought you weren't scared. And Lawrence is like, well. So, anyway, Lawrence brings the radio into the room where Jimmy's writing. And so, yeah. And so this is still the same scene, but we cut to the radio station. Oh, no, sorry, my mistake. So Ed Backwind interrupts the radio, the music, to report a meteor has landed in a backfield. And then he goes to Dale Jacobs. And Jimmy's still a jerk, and Lawrence is like all caught up in this, and Jimmy's like, yeah, whatever, I just have to write my paper. And then Dale describes the meteor creepy, like it's shaking, and there's a weird noise, and then it breaks open, and there's all these tentacles. And so, like, Ed Backwind, the fake news reporter, he's like, don't go near it! And then Dale goes near it, and he proceeds to get eaten up by these aliens. And Ed Backwind is like, Dale, no! And then, so, the reporter gets eaten up, Dale Jacobs. Rest in peace. So Lawrence is panicking, of course, and Jimmy's like, nah, it's a joke. And so then we go to construction workers in Gower's Field in the next scene. And so they've heard the same radio broadcast, and they're like laughing because they're in the field where it supposedly happened. And, so they're laughing, and then the site manager comes on, and he's kind of grumpy because it's a night shift, and they're getting paid overtime. And so he makes them turn off the radio and start working. And so the road crew turn off the radio and turn on the floodlights, which is important. Because then we cut back to the Hodges house, and Lawrence is just freaking out. And Jimmy wants him to calm down. And Jimmy says it's a prank, and then he tells Lawrence to check the window, because if there was a meteor, you'd probably see something. And so Lawrence checks the window, and he's like, Jimmy, there's something at the window! And Jimmy's like, I have this paper to write, and I'm never going to write it, And so, the Hodges' backyard faces Gower's Field, and Lawrence sees a bright glow in Gower's Field. And so then the radio cuts off the music back to Ed Backwind. I can never pronounce that. Ed Backwind, the fake news reporter, a.k.a. Edwin Blackguard. So the radio cuts back. It's this fake news report, and apparently the space aliens are attacking. And so he made contact with Walter Shakespeare at the Harlequin Dinner Theater. And I just want to say this, but, you can tell it's Corey Burton versing Walter Shakespeare, but it sounds nothing like Walter Shakespeare. So, in the story, either Walter Shakespeare had to get so much out of character that he sounds nothing like himself, or I don't know. It's just weird, because Walter Shakespeare sounds nothing like himself. So he's, in the Harlequin Dinner Theater, because, yeah, he just is. And then the alien, he's like, this is all a bunch of baloney, and, And then the door knocks because the aliens knock at the door, because they just do for some reason. And so he goes to the door, and Ed Backwind's like, be careful! And then he's like, get off me! And then he says, the rumors are true! And then the thing cuts, and we can assume he's eaten or taken by the aliens. I don't know. And then Ed Backwind says, we are under attack. We can expect a loss of power. And then he's like, the studio lights just went off, but, And so anyway, that we cut back to Gower's Field with the construction crew building a new road. And so one of the construction workers thinks the guy in the backhoe is digging too close to a power line. And so he tries to warn him, but the guy in the backhoe can't hear him. Then he hits power and phone. Of all the worst things to hit. And, he's okay. I'm not sure about the machine. Then the site manager comes on, and he's like, what happened here? And they're like, we hit something. And the site manager's like, what? And, the foreman's pretty upset, and because the power and telephones are out. So now we go back to the Hodges house, where Jimmy and Lawrence are just freaking out. They're both just yelling so much. What is it? Let me find it on the wiki. Oh, yeah. Lawrence Hodges, I want my mom! And Jimmy Barkley, I want your mom too! They're just freaking out, and then Jimmy's like, okay, we gotta keep our heads. And Lawrence is like, right. And then they both start screaming. It's hilarious. I love it. And so Lawrence finds his dad's battery-powered radio and turns it on. And then we go back to an Ed Backwind performance, and he goes to Eugene, and Eugene says, these aliens are from a more advanced culture since they're able to travel light years, and there must be a communication mishap, and I'm going to go talk to them. And let me just say that this is a really stupid thing to do on Eugene's part. Like, why? What? Like, okay, picture it. There's these aliens invading Earth, okay? And, like, there's these aliens coming down, and Eugene's like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna just go and, solicitate my greetings to them. Okay, that's a bad idea, but it's a radio drama, so who cares? So anyway, he goes and tries to talk to them, and then they break Wit End's front window, and they assumedly take Eugene, and it just cuts out like that again, so Ed Backwind is like, this is horrible. And then apparently the sponsor wants him to do the commercial right now, so Edwin just cuts the commercial. And it's a Bart Rathbone pimple cream commercial. A Bart Rathbone pimple cream commercial. And so I was listening to it, and there's voices over it, so it's hard to pick it up. But I looked on the AIO wiki, and yeah, they had it. And so I'm just gonna read it from the AIO wiki. So I don't do a good Walker Edmiston impression, so I won't do that. Listen, friends, are you sick and tired of those annoying red spots, pimples, and blackheads? Then maybe it's time you're tired to clear tinkling feeling of oxymoron. That's right, oxymoron is the only Acan medicine containing carbonate benzopene peroxide. That patented formula designed just to get rid of those pimples and keep them away. So the next time you look in the mirror at those ugly red things, just say to yourself, oxymoron! Available at all fine drugstores and Rathbones Electric Palace, where you can buy one and get the second one for the same price. Batteries not included. Void where prohibited. Some assembly required. Oh my... Bart Rathbone's doing pimple cream. Pimple cream. He runs a store called the Electric Palace. What? Like, what? And it says some assembly required. Pimple cream? And what? Okay. Batteries not... What? Is this some sort of... I don't know. It's just funny. I got a good laugh out of it. And then it's called Oxymoron. So Bart Rathbone has Oxymoron Pimple Cream, and he's the sponsor. And so, where are we? And so we go back to the Hodges house, and Jimmy's like, what? A pimple cream commercial? And, Lawrence, he's like, I want to do something, Jimmy. And Jimmy's like, well, I can read him my essay. That'll put him to sleep. And that's just really funny. I like that. And so Jimmy wants them to stay put. And then so after the pimple cream commercial, he cuts back to music. And then he cuts back and says the aliens are headed to the Silverwind restaurant where the science symposium is being held. A science symposium. What? Okay, that's just, okay. It's the teacher's convention, aka the science symposium. And then Lawrence right off turns the radio. Jimmy's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I want my mom and I want her now. And so he gets his bike, and Jimmy puts little resistance to stop him. Like, I understand that Lawrence can be wild, but Jimmy, what are you doing? You're a babysitter. You got to, it's really bad. Jimmy is not capable at all in this. And so we cut to the radio station, and we just go to Blackguard saying, where will they strike next? Is there no stopping them? And it's probably a good thing Lawrence didn't hear that, because he'd just get really panicked. And then Mr. Mifflin wants to see him to read an announcement. Mr. Mifflin wants Mr. Blackguard to read an announcement, and Mr. Blackguard's like, what is it? And or no, this is Shakespeare saying, Mr. Mifflin wants you to read an announcement, sir. And so the announcement is, terror from the skies is only a dramatization, nothing else. Because apparently the station has been receiving several phone calls from frightened parents, and Leonard Tyler's pigs are scared. Leonard Tyler. Okay, wait, do we hear at all from Leonard Tyler Okay, no. Leonard Tyler's not mentioned at all in the AIO wiki or this. He's not mentioned. Leonard Tyler's just a one-time thing. And apparently he has pigs that get scared by news reports. That's weird. So, and then Edwin's like, I hope Leonard Tyler's pigs are happy because it's funny. And then we cut to an Odyssey street and Jimmy and Lawrence are biking. But Jimmy thinks it's weird because, there's no damage. And then they go past Wits End, and the front window, which Eugene apparently was in Wits End at the time, the front window isn't smashed. And so Jimmy's like, Lawrence, stop! This is weird. What's going on here? And Lawrence is like, well, I don't care. I just want my mom, and I want her now. And then he says, maybe the aliens fixed it. And Jimmy's like, no. But then, Lawrence goes off at high speed, and Jimmy's like, okay, well, whatever. So really bad on Jimmy's part. He should have tried to stop Lawrence. And then they both go into the Silverwind restaurant. And so we cut to the Silverwind restaurant. And apparently they've been having a whole bunch of boring academic jargon at the teachers' conference and financial reports and things like that. And the speaker welcomes Whit up because he's been telling them that they've had a special announcement all night. And so, this is Principal Skinner. So, Whit wants all teachers to help with the drama by Blackguard. He wants teachers to scream and yell as if they were being attacked, and then Whit has this super funny line, and he says, after this year's budget cuts, that shouldn't be too hard to do. Yeah, that hits home. So basically, in a nutshell, Whit wants everyone to help with the dramatization by pretending as though they're attacked by aliens. And I'm just thinking it's a really good thing Lawrence can hear this, or Lawrence would just be freaking out. So, we cut back to the radio station for a short scene, and we hear this other faux alien report, and by this woman, I forget her name, and she's like, oh yeah, so this woman, what's her name? Let me check the AIO wiki quick. Okay, I can't find it. So this lady, she's talking about the aliens, and she's like, we kept shooting and shooting and shooting at them, and they giggled. And then she says, do you know how horrifying it is to hear an alien giggle? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And so then Ed Backwind, a.k.a. Edwin Blackguard, cuts her off, and he's like, oh, we have confirmation the aliens are they're at the Silverwind restaurant right now. And so Walter Shakespeare puts the Silverwind restaurant on. Then we cut to the Silverwind restaurant, and Whit is giving the teachers instructions, when to shout, when he puts his hand up, and when to stop, when he puts his hand down. And then he turns on the radio station, and, the lady who gave the broadcast was Mildred Fineswiper. Okay, sorry, that was off on a tangent here. So, anyway, Ed Backwind connects with Whit at the restaurant, and Whit's like, well, the crowd of scientists at the restaurant are putting their heads together and trying to figure out what to do, but the aliens are 1 minute away, and it's a big climatic moment. And then we go back to an Odyssey street, and James like, Lawrence, this is ridiculous, stop. And Lawrence is like, I'm going to get my mom and I want her now. Because, there's no damage at all. And so, Lawrence is like, hey, we can go, here's the Silverwind restaurant, we can go in the back way. And I'm like, wait, what? How does Lawrence know that, most restaurants have a backdoor kitchen, but number one, most backdoor kitchens are the one-sided doors where you can't open it from the outside. And two, he obviously has been through that area, what? I don't know, it's weird. So, when Jimmy keeps trying to tell him it's a prank, and then they hear the teacher screaming because Whit put up his hand, and Lawrence gets really panicked, and he runs in the restaurant. And then we cut to the radio station, and Edwin is listening to all the teachers scream, and he's like, oh, this is wonderful! And then Whit, he's still broadcasting, and he's like, Ed Backwind, are you there? It's a miracle! We're spraying the aliens with water, and they're retreating! The water affects them like acid! And I'm like, okay, whatever, who cares? And then Lawrence comes in, right, literally, next to the microphone. And he's like, Mom, where are you, Mom? And then apparently his mom's like right next to the microphone too, and she's like, oh, Lawrence, I'm here. And his mom's like, and Lawrence is like, oh, Mom, there you are. And I'm like, whoa, okay. There's like a crowd of assumedly 30 teachers screaming, and you hear this one voice, like, he's not even speaking that. How do you hear the voice unless if he's right next to the microphone? I don't know. But anyway, and this is all being broadcasted. And then he's like, I'll save you, Mom. And then Lawrence just completely ruins the final scene for everyone. And Walter Shakespeare's trying to turn the thing off, but for some reason it's broken, because it has to be. And like Lawrence and his mom were talking, and his mom's like, oh, it was just all a prank. And Lawrence is like, oh. And then Blackguard is like, what's happening? What's happening? He's like freaking out, and then Walter Shakespeare's like, you're still on the air. And then Blackguard's like, oh, and then Blackguard it ends horribly, and Blackguard's like just stumbling over his lines, and then he turns it off, and he's like, Shakespeare, what happened? Which is awesome. I love it. And that's the last we hear from Blackguard in this episode. So then we cut to the restaurant, and Whit's like, well, that ends our career as voice actors, which really at all, like, come on, Whit. And then Whit says to Jimmy, do you have something you want to say, Jimmy? And Jimmy's like, yeah, if you're here, Mr. Gerard, which is his English teacher, I might be a little late handing in his essay. But when I heard this, I was confused as to what Whit meant by saying, do you have something to say? Like, does Whit want Jimmy to apologize? I don't know. It's kind of weird, because Whit's like, Jimmy, you have something to say to all these people? Jimmy's like, yeah, I might be late handing. I don't know. It's just weird. And why didn't Whit say that to Lawrence? Because Lawrence was really the one who messed it up. But, okay, whatever. And then to the final scene, we're in Mrs. Hodges' car. And she's surprised that they let their imaginations run away. And Lawrence says, oh, it was so real. And then he's like, did I ruin it for everyone? And Mrs. Hodges says, from what I heard, I doubt that program could have been ruined any more than it was. What? What? That makes no sense whatsoever. Like, okay, I get that it was kind of a dramatization, and it was aired a day before Halloween. Yeah, I get that, but what? Like, how was it ruined? If they kept listening to the program, they would have realized it was fake. Because he's like, it was a dramatization, that's all it is. And I don't know. It's weird. And then she almost crashes into ... Harlow Doyle. And Harlow Doyle's like freaking out too because he's Harlow Doyle and I don't know. It's funny. And like he's panicked and he's like, oh, get everyone and run for the hills, get your water guns, and And then like it ends with Mrs. Hodges saying that Mr. Blackguard should be more careful with his radio dramas in the future. And the episode ends there. And then Chris comes in, and there is no Bible verse. There is no moral. What? oh my. And so the AAO Wiki puts the theme as discernment, but I think that's a stretch. Like, this episode goes with I Slap Floor in that it has no moral whatsoever. Like, okay, was this a Halloween episode they did? I don't know. It's weird. She's like, well, that's it for Adventures in Odyssey. What? Like, you're doing a Halloween episode without a moral. That's what Focus on the Family's doing. I don't know. So, I had a few final thoughts about this episode. One, this episode is extremely unrealistic. First, in the sense that Edwin Blackguard's able to get so many people for radio production. Like, okay, I get it that there's radio productions and realistic, but how did Edwin Blackguard get so many people to, like, and all across, no, they weren't across town, they were in the studio. So, it just seems unrealistic to me that he'd get all these, like, and then right from the start, why didn't Edwin Blackguard just, I don't know. I guess it was for the realistic factor. Second of all, why did they interrupt the teachers' conference for a fake radio drama? Like, what? Like, And from what I heard, it took, like, probably about 10 minutes of their time doing this fake broadcasting. So, I don't know. If you've ever been to a conference or an AGM before, 10 minutes can be extremely valuable to get motions passed, discuss financial stuff, or I don't know. It's just kind of weird. And the third thing I have with this episode is the timing. So this episode was originally released... Wait, let me check the wiki. Okay, it was originally released October 30th, 1993. October 30th. That was the first airing of it. A day before Halloween, it aired. And this episode has no moral, nothing kids should be taking away. It's a Halloween episode. That's what it is. This is a Halloween episode focused on the family maid. And I haven't really seen Focus on the Family do it much after this, but still, I just think it's kind of weird that Focus on the Family's cutting. I don't know. It's a fun episode to do, and I enjoyed. I definitely enjoyed making this podcast, but Terror from the Skies, I don't know. It's really not that great an episode. It doesn't really align with Focus on the Family's values, and to be honest, it's not that good an episode. So anyway, that's all I have with my notes about Terror from the Skies. So I will be back next week talking about episode 306, A Victim of Circumstances. So for now, I'll say goodbye, and thanks for listening to Adventures into Odyssey with your host, Wyatt Jackson. See you next time. Adventures into Odyssey is a fan podcast and has no affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family.